morning. First of all, I am Tirtha, and Dr. Tyagu with me is the co-coordinator of this invited lecture series. I would first want to thank all of you for being a part of this seminar series, and I would want to thank ICSSR for funding this. It all started with last year when ICSSR first requested us to all write proposals for workshops, seminar series, etc., etc. So, and Dr. Tyagu and me, myself, we teach a course here at CDS to master students, issues in Indian agriculture. And we would always discuss between ourselves that we are, despite our best efforts, because of dearth of time, we are often not able to cover several aspects which we would want to ideally. So when ICSSR requested us for this proposal, we became very excited. We were like, this is the best way we could actually cover all those aspects which we are usually unable to many times. So so that is how it all started. So what happened then? We thought both of us will be conducting the lectures, but then we realized over time that uh, there are so many people, really good, eminent researchers who are working on these areas. So why should we be doing the talking when participants will gain the most when those researchers themselves speak to them? So that is how we actually came up with this design, with this structure of the lecture series, invited lecture series. So then we started writing to them, and we are very grateful that all of them agreed to be part of this series. And we are very, very pleased as to how we have been finally able to conceptualize this seminar series. So ours is a workshop which is truly pluralistic in nature, in the sense we have 9 economists, 2 sociologists, 1 anthropologist, 1 journalist, and 1 development sector professional. We have speakers affiliated to distinguished academic institutions across the globe, and all of them have contributed to contemporary issues in Indian agriculture. So the broad topics which will be covered in this lecture series over the next 3 days would be related to agriculture, land, labor, farm distress, climate change, gender, mechanization, technology, green revolution. So over the next 3 days, our speakers will be engaging and critiquing 3 different technocratic future visions of agriculture. First, organic and sustainable. Second, green revolution based. And third, based on genetically modified technology. I'm sure all of us would gain immensely. We will learn a lot from this series over the next 3 days. I would also, I would like to thank the participants. This series would have been impossible without you. Uh, in such short notice, you responded to our call for applications, sent applications. We got such beautiful, so nice applications, and it was extremely difficult to shortlist from them. I want to congratulate first all of you for making it to the final list. And also I would want to request you to attend all the sessions. As you're already aware that the certificate of participation is conditional on your attendance in all the sessions. And also, we have very distinguished speakers over the next 3 days. So I would request all of you to engage and actively participate with the speakers to try and learn the most from them. We all have we can gain a lot from this series. Finally, I would like to thank our director for giving us all the support. He's given us a lot of support throughout the process when we were planning, and we finally came up with this seminar series. We are very grateful to him. I would now request Professor Sunil Mani, our director, to give the opening remarks. Sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Tirtha and Tyagu, for organizing this very nice training program. I can see that you have lined up a impressive list of speakers, and there is also good participation from across the country for this program. And this is particularly important because the interest in Indian agriculture within the Indian economic literature has been going down. And it looks as if the share of agriculture in GDP has been going down, the interest also has been going down. and we don't find very many within the center itself. We didn't have anyone working on India's agriculture for a long time. We only had one section on plantation crops and not on general Indian agriculture. So I think this is a very nice program, which I hope would restart systematic work on India's agriculture. And Jyota has already welcomed all of you. And I just wanted to say a very few words about CDS. Most of you are actually familiar. There are a number of CDS students themselves participating. And nevertheless, at the risk of repetition, I just want to say that the center was established in 1970. So it's about 52 years old now. About 2 years ago, we celebrated its 50th foundation year. And it's funded by basically the Indian Council of Social Science Research and the government of Kerala. We also have specific funding from various agencies, which I will just briefly list out. And in terms of our activities, we have three main activities here. The first one is research. And research is organized according to themes which are selected by the faculty. The faculty has complete freedom to select topics on which they would like to work on. And there is no compulsion from the institute that you should work on a very specific, narrow specific area as such. So there is complete autonomy in terms of deciding on what to work on and how to work on, etc. and so on. And as Jyota said, the institute actually has been providing support to its faculty, and the main support for research is our excellent library. And I'm sure some of you will be able to come here and take advantage of this excellent research material that we have in our library. And research is organized around 11 themes. And as I said, these themes are chosen by the faculty, and a detailed listing of these themes, etc., you will find in our annual report and also on our website. And I will not go into the specific details about each of those themes. The second activity that we have is teaching. And in terms of teaching, we are now having two programs. One is a PhD program, which is about 4-year plus, and in economics. And the second program is a master's program in applied economics, which we started about 10 years ago. That is a new program. Before that, we used to have till quite recently a MPhil program in applied economics. Now, as part of the new education policy, since MPhil is discontinued, we have also discontinued the MPhil program. And so we have now a 2-year master's program in applied economics and the PhD in economics. Now, the interesting thing about these two programs is that we are affiliated to JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. And in fact, our affiliation with JNU goes back to the 1970s. We are as old as JNU. And we are the only social science institute in India which is affiliated to JNU. JNU has, as you know, is a central university based in Delhi, non-affiliating. It has a few scientific research establishments which are under its fold, including, for instance, the International Center for Free and Open Source Software here in Trivandrum, which secured affiliation to JNU just a few months ago. I serve on the governing body of that center as well. And so JNU has now affiliated that center for PhD. So the teaching program, another interesting thing about the teaching program is that it's focused on applied economics. It's application of economic theory to selected economic problems. And the students come from all over the country based on an entrance examination for both the and plus an interview for both the programs. And we have now in campus approximately 90 students in both these programs. The stock of PhD students and the two batches of master's students. And they have been provided with fairly decent accommodation facilities within the center. The third activity that we have is training. And in fact, what Tirtha and Tyagu are organizing right now is one such training program. We have many such training programs which are planned throughout this fiscal year. I can see that we have about 5 programs, and we may have more such programs also in the future. In addition to the training program, some of the faculty offers what is called certificate courses in specific areas, like for instance in financial econometrics, in advanced economic theory, then in the R program and behavioral economics, etc., and so on. So these programs have been targeted specifically at our own students at the moment, but I'm sure this will be thrown open to everyone in the future. Okay. So research, teaching, and training are the three activities of the center. And among the ICSSR institutes, there are 24 of them which are located throughout the length and breadth of our country. We are the only ICSSR institute which is based here in Kerala. And we are one of the oldest ICSSR institutes also. And among the ICSSR institutes, in terms of ranking, we are rated #1 in terms of our publications. And this has been, although formal ranking was instituted only quite recently, but even in the past, when it was done, we always used to be rated as #1, but that was not based on any objective criteria. But now we have a objective criteria in terms of Scopus Index publications, etc., and so on. And we do attract a lot of visitors from abroad. And they come in the form of last 2 years, of course, naturally, because of the pandemic, we didn't have any visitors. But I can see that more visitors are in the process of coming this year. And these are PhD students from foreign universities who would like to come and work on India. And there are also researchers who would like to do various kinds of research on different aspects of India. So they are also very welcome to come and stay here. And apart from our resident faculty of 23 sanctioned positions, of course, at the moment, we are only about 18. And we also have a number of visiting professors who come here at different points in time and supplement our teaching and research. And then in terms of research, I must also say that we have some specialized units here. And there are 3 specialized units. One, as I mentioned before, on plantation crops, which is funded by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. It is called the National Research Program on Plantation Crop Development. And it is in that unit is in the process of making a compendium on plantation crops, covering the 4 plantation crops of natural rubber, tea, spices, and coffee. And then the second specialized unit, there are 2 units which are funded by the Kerala government. One on research unit on local self-government, which is concerned with issues related to decentralization. As you know, Kerala is one of the most decentralized states in the country in terms of its governance. And then we have the research program on international migration from Kerala, which is also funded by the Kerala government. Because as you know, Kerala is one of the states in the country which has experienced a huge amount of international migration, especially to the Middle East. And we are one of the largest recipients of remittances to the country. Almost like 19% of the remittances coming to India comes to Kerala alone. Apart from these 3 units, we have professorial chairs established by the Niti Aayog, or earlier it is called the Planning Commission, and also by the Reserve Bank of India. So I think I have given you now a snapshot picture of our center. More details are available in our annual report and on cds.edu. And if you have any specific queries or comments to make, then of course you are most welcome to do that during the course of this year. And as Tirtha and Thiago would say that, we would also like to establish contacts with you. You are very, very welcome to come and use our library, etc., at different points in time, because we are slowly opening up as the infection rates and so on are coming down, and we are almost back to normal in terms of our working. So, and I can see that Tirtha and Thiago has taken the trouble of having an excellent program worked out for the next 3 days. It is not only in the choice of topics, but also in the choice of speakers. It is very interesting. And as Tirtha has said, these are some of the best researchers in the field in those areas. So I think, I am quite envious that this is an excellent program. And especially given the fact that issues related to agriculture are now becoming very important. And we have had many, many national conversations on these topics quite recently. And to get a good idea and hang of these topics, I think attendance of these lectures will be very, very helpful. So I wish you the very best, and I thank Tirtha and Thiago for organizing this.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Professor Mani, for that the overview of our center, and thank you, Dr. Chatterjee, for welcoming all of us. Yeah, so today, as we begin, like again, there have been many voices. As Professor Mani was saying, the issues related to agriculture were probably discussed lesser and lesser as its share in GDP was coming down, but there were few voices which have kept on highlighting these issues and bringing it to attention. And one of the voices is important voices in this regard is Jaideep Hardikar. He's a Nagpur-based journalist and writer. He's part of this initiative we call People's Archive of Rural India. He's a major important figure in that particular initiative. He has more than decades worth of experience reporting on Vidarbha's farmer suicides and cotton crisis. His first book called A Village Awaits Doomsday, which was released in 2013, focused on displacement of people from their homes by public and private funded development schemes and construction projects. His most recent work called Ram Rao, Story of India's Farm Crisis, Jaideep attempts to put a face to India's unending farm crisis. Over time, many researchers, particularly economists, have looked at the agrarian crisis narrative through, and they kind of look at numbers like, say, number of suicides, the number of drought years, growth rate of farm incomes, agricultural labor wages, and so on. But what Jaideep has done, apart from these numbers, is to dig in deep and express the crisis in a particular way. In a sense, his writings, his books and articles look at the journey of everyday life of an Indian farmer, his daily struggles, his desperation to come out of his situation. I would say his and her situation, his and her inability and many failings, the quagmire of issues she and he faces, and how she and he comes to pass, where she and he chooses to put an end of it all. The book Ram Rao starts with a farmer who wants to commit suicide, consumes the pesticides, but consumes 2 bottles of pesticide, but does not die because this pesticide is not probably fake. So this is the kind of things he looks at, and it's a much more detailed work, and I think he will talk about that in this talk. So his result of years of committed reportage. This book is an evocative read, and it rescues the ordinary life from obscurity and turns it into essential biography of our times. Today he'll be talking about a topic, problems in and of agriculture, reflections from the field. Jaideep, welcome. And Jaideep, would you want to have a round of introduction, or if you would want to start the talk, you can talk. You can start. Yeah, whichever way. It's a large number, so you can choose whichever you want to do.
Well, thank you, Tiago, to have me at Center for Development Studies, Professor Mani, Tita Madam, and others. It's always very difficult to speak at the windows. Sort of, the essential part of communication, apart from the medium, message, etc., is the feedback. I usually enjoy kind of offline interactions where you actually get to meet and get the pulse of whether you are boring people or whether it's you're able to cut across your message properly. But thanks very much. I have
I'll just make a small request. People, if they can switch on the video, I think that window problem could be reduced a bit, at least to get a somewhat feel of
sense people, of who I am talking to. A few of them. Right.
So I would request all of you to switch on the videos when they are listening to the talks.
I hope I'm audible clearly, and I'm going to share a small presentation so that I kind of sort of rely on the points that I want to speak about. It's a gigantic topic, and Tiago, you have put me in a spot because you're opening the 3-day conversation on agriculture and agrarian issues with me, and I was a bit rattled. The framing of the issues is something that journalists are not really should not be really doing or attempting. The academicians, researchers, and actual practitioners should be doing that. Nevertheless, since you have given me this onus, let me just see if I can share my kind of talk that I'll you know can you can you see this?
Yeah, Jaideep, we can
Okay, all
see the
right.
screen. Yeah.
Yeah, so let me start with my own story of how I and why how and why I ended up being a rural reporter. And I take you back into 1996 when I started my career as a journalist. It was almost the beginning of this very sad spiral of the farmers' suicides. And like many of budding and aspiring journalists, I chanced upon reading Sainath's phenomenal book called "Everybody Loves a Good Drought." Those who have not read it among the students, I would welcome to read it. It's a starting point to really understand the context and the canvas of rural India, and of course his subsequent writings and work. So I come from a very small town background, and most of my friends in my school came from rural and agrarian backgrounds. Almost 70-80% of my friends were children of farmers. And so the issues of monsoon, the delayed rains, the inability to take a new shirt at the beginning of a session, all these were the common talks, sort of gossip, if you will, in my early, schooling period. So I was naturally interested, and then every so often during vacations, etc., I would go and live off on the farm or the houses of those my friends. Some of them have really grown up to become big names in their own spheres, but I think the early inclination to understanding agriculture, that romance of living on the farm, all that was there. I became a journalist in a small town. Nagpur was not a really big city. It's not a it's a big city in terms of population, but in Indian context, it's a tier 3 city. And Sainath's book really had an indelible impact and impression on my mind. So I decided that I might as well start reporting and looking at the issues. And thanks to my first editor, late Meghnad Bodhankar, I could look at the rural issues from very early on. Sainath at that point of time was moving in Telangana and reporting on the farm distress and the suicides. And I was witnessing the same spiral in my own region of Vidarbha. And the link was cotton. It was the beginning of farmers' suicide. So the first case that I really looked at was in 97 in a small village in Yavatmal town. And then Yavatmal district was to become one of my focus areas, and it has remained a focus area for me for almost 25 years now. So that was the early phase. But when you're 2021 and coming from non-academic background to understand the cobweb of issues, economics, the ecology, the 100 verticals that agriculture is all about, markets, it's all very difficult. So my entry point was really the social side of the issue. The families that are left behind, um, or the children who have lost their parents, etc., etc. Over a period of time, I think I began to look at the peripheral issues. Why are people displaced? So I began to look at the issue of displacement. Why are people migrating? Why do people migrate most of the time from rural India to urban India? So that was the journey which actually brought me to the essential aspect of agrarian economy. And if you have to understand the country's economy, the country's social life, you cannot skirt this whole universe of rural India. Different regions, varied agroclimatic zones. We are probably a country with probably the largest number of agroclimatic zones. I mean, what works in, say, one district of Vidarbha really doesn't work in other district of Vidarbha in the same region, because the rainfall patterns change, the cropping patterns change. Historically, farmers have been growing annual crops, etc., etc. So that was the beginning, and it has since kind of gripped me. I look at different aspects of agrarian economy. Suicides to me were really an entry point, but I soon realized that it is not the major issue. There is something deeper into that. So let me begin with a few stories, really. How I entered and how I reflect. These are the two sort of images from two different villages in the same district of Yavatmal. The left is the photograph that you see is the person who killed himself in the summer of 2016. You see his mother, and on the right hand side is another family, or the member of the family. His brother committed suicide. The left one was married. He left a widow of 23 years of age and two kids. One was 3, the other one was still to be born. He's now, I guess, 7 or 8 years old. The two families met in a mortuary while the body of the left farmer was coming out of the mortuary. The body of his brother, the one on the right, Suraj Chaudhary, his body was entering the mortuary, and that's where they met. Vidarbha mortuaries now work in the countryside 24/7. There was a GR that was issued in the 2003.
I think there is some internet issue from his end. Give us 2 minutes, we'll sort it out.
Am I audible now?
Yeah,
Yes.
Jaideep, we can hear you.
Yeah, let me just I was saying that it's a very weird, stories that I had to report. I mean, I reported. These are the two different families bound by the tragedy of the death of a headman from their family. The left one. Both these villages are from Yavatmal, sort of a cotton, growing area. These families actually met at a mortuary, late in the evening. The body of the first one, the left one, was coming out, and the body of the younger brother of the right one, it was entering. So you see, in Vidarbha, the mortuaries these days run 24/7 in the countryside. 2003 onwards, the government of Maharashtra issued a GR saying, keep the mortuaries open because the bodies would come at any time, odd hours. So the families would want their postmortems to be done quickly. Um, you know, uh, this is the story of a young boy who lost his parents span of 2 hours with a cumulative debt of about 25 lakh rupees. So there have been incidents where multiple members of the same family have committed suicide. There's one story that I did from Akola where 4 members of a family ended their lives over a span of 4 years. First was the father, then 3 brothers. So every single family uh, in Vidarbha, many of these cases in from the region portray a very grim reality as such, and this is the most tragic of the stories. There are two families you see here. The left one, the suicide by a young child, 14 years old. He was in SSC. Parents could not support, so he would go to the school without a tiffin. Marginal farmer, he left a note saying, "I don't see for me in the future." So it's like a generation saying, "I don't have any hope for the future." So you can read this story on People's Archive of Rural India if someone wants to go into the details. And the right one is a 19-year-old girl who wanted to study. She was revolting against the orthodoxy, social orthodoxy on one hand, and the economic inequality on the other hand. This is from Latur, the right one. They had an acre of land. The father said, "I'll sell the land and get you married." And the girl, being a generational next girl, she said, "You don't sell the land. Raise some money for me to become a nurse so that I support you." Uh, and the parents would not sort of oblige the girl. And so she ended herself saying, "I have three more siblings, and it's better that I end my life and my parents, have a rethink and support their education because that's more crucial." So you have these social consequences of what this gigantic crisis is all about. Now, this is not from Vidarbha. These two pictures are from Kaveri Delta, from Tamil Nadu. And in 2018, February, March, 17 and 18, you saw this huge number of sudden heart attacks and suicides in the Delta because that was a drought. Hello. I hope I'm audible.
Jaideep, I think your slides are still not moving and your voice again started breaking. So this slide, yeah, this one we didn't see. Yes, yes, yes. You have to start from here again. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm losing the.
Yeah, now
Okay,
it is
yeah.
fine. Now
So
your voice is fine. Yes.
okay, so this is a story from Delta, Kaveri Delta, where you have several families who lost their uh, men to heart attacks because of the loss of crops in a very very sort of a biting drought here. And there have been several studies by the local heart surgeon, cardiologists, and some social groups that said that this was unusual. More than 250 heart sudden heart attacks and deaths because of panic and anxiety. And I reported on that. It is another social sort of a fallout of the gigantic crisis from a different region with a different social outcome. Look at this. This I found these old people on an MG site when I was traveling in the Delta. The youngest of them was 72 years old. They were all working. They were all working on a job because their families, because of the drought here, had moved out of the Delta. That Delta, Kaveri Delta, is a region from where agricultural civilization begins. Early agricultural annualized domestication of crops in India at least begins. This is the region where people are running away from river that has gone dry, river that sustains human beings and culture. And so I was completely, I felt very sad to see old people working. They were all working and digging holes. This is Ujwala Petkar, one of the protagonists I have followed for almost 20 years now. She lost her husband in 2002. Then she lost her son in 2018. Both committed suicide. She has been hanging on to the farm, experimenting, repaying loans, and sort of trying to bring together her life. She's an exceptional farmer. I don't see her as a widow. I think she's a woman farmer who has completely altered the game. And I've been arguing that women farmers and farming households driven by women, they farm differently from the male households. There has to be a sociological inquiry into what are those differences that a female farmer uh, uh, would what's the different approach that a woman farmer takes from her male counterpart. And we will definitely find lots of differences in difference of approach in the uh, Ram Rao, my book actually captures many of these shades of daily life that farmers face, the choices he makes, and the reason why he makes those choices, etc. Have I lost you again?
Yeah, we're beginning to lose you. Beginning to lose. Now I think it should be fine. Can you speak?
Should I?
Yes, no, it is
Yeah,
fine. I think it is fluctuating.
my network is fine. My network is fine. I don't know what's happening. Very weird. Uh, so coming to a few of the issues that I want to flag off when I say that, and I'll come to why I say the problems in agriculture and problems of agriculture have to be seen in different contexts. So here I'm talking about problems in agriculture, where we know that in terms of data, we know how many, almost 400,000 farmers have killed themselves, and there's a suicide every 30 minutes. 7.5 million farm households have quit farming between 91 and 2011. 2,000 farmers a day. That's at that rate. Is this good or bad? Some economists would say it is good. People leaving farming and shifting to non-farm economy. But most of these, you don't see a cumulative rise in the non-farm employment. If you look at the census, an agriculture census, you see that the number of farm households leaving agriculture are actually becoming landless laborers or employees on their own farm. So massive land transfer is not leading to off-farm agriculture income. And of late, the NSSO sample studies are showing us that most of the farm income of a family is actually coming from the wages rather than from the land or production. 60% of the rural households are in V-shell debt trap. It's a debt trap. It's not as if you are repaying the debt. It's a debt trap. You are juggling multiple loans again. And agricultural growth sector's growth has stagnated. Leave aside the 2 years of COVID, because the benchmark growth rate that they sort of considered last year, the growth rate they say is 3.2%, but the benchmark it has been lower. But overall, in the past 2.5 decades, it's not even 1% or around 1%. So my argument is that what Sainath says that this crisis is not merely of agriculture as a sector. 60-70% people are either directly or indirectly dependent on agriculture as a sector. And as Professor Mani earlier in his opening remarks said, that agriculture as a sector, economically, sociologically, from the growth perspective, has sort of been fallen off the basket. Nobody's really talking about, we talk about goals, or we talk about interventions that are immediate or of the sense, but we are not taking a holistic picture of agriculture, rural as such. And I think that's because we don't acknowledge this crisis as crisis of our civilization or crisis of our society. And then the farm. Hello, can you hear me? Have I lost you again?
Yeah, again we were beginning to lose you. Yes. Yeah, but you started. You were talking about farm crisis. Please continue. Now I think it should be fine again.
So I'm saying that this farm suicides or migration, distress migration, all these are the symptoms. The problem of rural India is far deeper because of two reasons. One is that in the past 20 years, the service sector GDP is almost 65 to 70% of our GDP. And agriculture, despite having 60-70% people directly or indirectly dependent, is now around 12 to 13% of the GDP, and industry is somewhere in between. And industry or services are not employing as much population as they should. So it's not just that the agriculture is performing badly; it's the two other sectors that's also performing, differently because of the automation, because of the digital side of that, which is basically a sort of a jobless economic growth that we have seen in the 20 years. So what the problems in agriculture are in turn fueled by problems in the other sectors of economy. And farming has become hugely risky, because on the one side you have very, very volatile markets that are now interlocked with the global markets, and you have increasing climatic aberrations. You have multiple drought years. Karnataka, for instance, South Karnataka, there are some blocks and tehsils that have been in drought for almost 13 to 14 years on the trot. How do you deal with it? Or floods, so drought, flood, and heavy rainfall, rainfall aberrations. How do you deal with it when there is not even an acknowledgement of the patterns of climatic aberrations, in the policy making? Rural indebtedness is growing. Even if you give one farm waiver, it only, you're only talking about the landed class. The indebtedness among the landless is also on the rise, and that is why the social strife. You see, the social strife is widening. There's inequality of all social as well as economic scale, and this is not purely an economic crisis. It also has an ecological dimension to it, which I'll talk about a little later. But we have to understand the context in which this is happening. This is the framework that we can use is really the post-globalization, the devaluation of currency, integration of the local markets with global markets, high energy inputs. It's complete full-blown industrial agriculture model that we have adopted. We are seeking solutions in the market framework, and unfortunately, the markets are not able to provide solutions. So, like for instance, if there is a drought, or if there is a crop failure because of the problems in seed, the argument has been that the market will take care of it. But when the peasantry falls into crisis, it doesn't go to the market for solution. It goes to the state for solution. That's the dichotomy. compensate us for our losses. So over the last 20 years, if you look at the responses of the state governments, it has been largely driven by the political expediency, the farm loan waivers, or the compensation on crop losses, or seed for seed replacement, or you create some sort of an employment in the rural sector. It is all driven by the political expediency without really realizing that your agriculture economy needs a comprehensive look from all angles. You have to look at water, you have to look at your rivers. Have I lost you again?
Yeah, once again, beginning to, but it should be fine, I think, now again.
I'm so sorry about this. I don't know if the network is
No,
looking good.
yeah, but yeah, you're losing your flow in between. We're talking about a very interesting point
Yes.
here. Yes, that markets are not.
Yeah, so I'm saying that this I find quite intriguing, that while we hear more and more policymakers, the political leadership, the industrial leaders, or the powers that be, everyone says leave it to the markets, they will take care of. They will take care. If you look at the commentators who are pro market, they'll say leave it to the markets. But when the crisis strikes you, the peasantry moves not to the market, it goes to the state. It goes to the state for help. It says, give me compensation for my crop losses. If there are animal raids, which is now a major issue in the countryside, the peasantry doesn't go to the market. The peasantry goes to the state. So if state is such an important stakeholder, the state must and should then look at agriculture economy in totality. You have to look at rivers, you have to look at the ecology, you have to look at the markets, you have to look at the risk mitigation measures, you have to look at procurement, everything. So this is the context that we are in post globalization. We have left it to the markets. Look at the insurance scheme, the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. It is all driven by private insurance, but it doesn't mitigate the risk. This year there is a sharp drop in peasant farmers who are opting for such scheme, because they know that it's not mitigating the risks. Then globally inequality is on the rise, income inequality is on the rise, and you add social discrimination and social inequalities of our society, and you have market inequality, market driven inequalities, and you have the social inequalities going together, which is further aggravating the social life. And commercialization of agriculture, everything, seed to value addition, even machines that are on work, it's barring human beings who are part of the agrarian landscape, everything is now commercial, everything is a profit or loss, everything is a commodity, which is a phenomenon that has grown intensified in the last 20-25 years. So what do we have? We now have a countryside which is not even the third world. It is probably relegated to the fourth or fifth world, which begets or which covets an urgent kind of attention. You move away from any city, 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers from any city, and you come across a radically different landscape. I drive from Nagpur, 10 kilometers, you're off from Nagpur or from Bombay. You have these blue tarpaulins covering the shanties and shops. These are peasant farmers who have been relegated to that world. It's a completely different world, obscured by these new highways that are coming up all over the country, which I say in my book Ramrao, that when I go to Ramrao's village, I actually travel very fast now these days on the highway to reach him. But I don't see any villages that I would see, say, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line, because they've been obscured by those new highways that are coming. And of course, the climate change and ecological degradation, which now seem irreversible in the business as usual scenario. And industrial agriculture, to me, looks like you're distancing humans from the ecology. We are part of the nature, we are part of ecosystem and ecology. We seem to have forgotten that in our ghettos or gated communities living in the homes, we are somehow not part of the natural carbon. We are part of the natural carbon. We are part of the nature. We are part of ecosystem. So how can we forget that? But we seem to be, forgetting that when we talk about agriculture or fixing agriculture, economies. It's the same points that I make, that from inputs to markets, actually nothing is working. Um, Overarching policies are really not working. We are now growing more wheat, yes, but we are putting in more chemicals and fertilizers to grow 1 kg of wheat. Say 20 years ago, it was 1 unit of fertilizer. Today it is 10 units of fertilizer. Our fertilizer consumption is growing phenomenally. Our use of chemical inputs is growing. Usually nobody knows those complex, synthetic pyrethroids. If I ask Ramrao, what do you mean by this endosulfan? What do you know about it? He knows it's a chemical, but he doesn't know the chemistry of that. No farmer will be able to know the chemistry of what he's using. But you get those fancy items. I would invite some of you to really visit the agriculture input shop and see for yourself what kind of inputs we are now selling to our farmers. So market, monsoon and money flow. There's a less money flow as compared to urban India. And we are going for multilateral and bilateral treaties. The Asia Pacific Agreement, and then you have multilateral and bilateral agreements with, say, Indonesia on, say, edible oils. That is crushing the local markets. And hello, am I audible?
So it's not clear, sir. Your voice is breaking.
Again, I guess.
Maybe all of us could switch off our video. Will that help his connectivity? I'm not sure.
That won't help well.
I guess.
That won't? Okay.
Journey of a peasant farmer starts with right from preparation of soil, seeds, buying of seeds, up to he has to make a journey up to the market. I mean, to the consumer. In this whole journey from farm to fork, there's a production system, there's a post-production system, post-harvest system, and there is a market, and there is climate. There are 100 verticals, and each single vertical a farmer has to take care of. Now, a farmer of 2 acres, 83-84% of Indian peasantry is a small farm households. An educated, highly educated person can't decipher the market economy. When do you sell your cotton? When do you take that call? Is it going up or down? Are the prices going up and down? How do we expect a small peasantry to deal with these 100 verticals all by themselves? Because our extension systems have collapsed. The agriculture universities in the last 10-15 years haven't really given us a single good seed of cotton or of, say, paddy or of wheat. All that we talk about is something that Aniket Aga will speak, I think, later in the day. Is this genetic modification of the crops, which is actually an imported technology. Something is happening in the ICSSR regime, but we don't know what kind of genetic modification they are doing and whether it really suits our agroclimatic zones. I think if you see which are the worst affected regions, I would say that the entire rain-fed landscape, the farming that is completely rain-fed, which is huge, more than 50% of the country. In states like Maharashtra, it is massive, or in Telangana. All these rain-fed regions are the worst affected regions. They are also India's biggest out-migration regions. Bihar, Eastern Uttar Pradesh, Odisha, Western Odisha, Northern Chhattisgarh, Bundelkhand, Western Vidarbha, Marathwada, Northern Karnataka, all these regions that are rain-fed, or, South Telangana, these are not just the problem regions, but also massively out-migration regions. Yes, sir. Have I lost you again?
Yeah, now you're audible.
Just stuck. I'm not seeing the. I think I have to stop sharing, I guess. Yeah. So, because the extension systems of India have collapsed, the agriculture extension systems have collapsed. Eh, to me, it is extremely difficult. If I put myself in Ram Rao's shoes, my protagonist, I don't think I'll be able to deal with good seed systems and then look at the climatic, follow the climatic patterns and then look at the market volatilities of the Chicago Board of Trade and look at what government is doing with, say, if I tomorrow grow edible oil seeds, it will be very difficult for me to follow these 100 verticals. And I think that's where a big gap lies. We have, we can talk about e-markets, for instance. A farmer sitting in Ghatanji, he doesn't have best of the internet connections. I mean, I am grappling right now with my internet connection on my part, which is fiddling with my interaction here. How can a small farmer who has never gone to school, is completely into dealing with his agriculture problems, how does he access e-market portals? What's the interface? What is the intervention? What is the capacity building that we are thinking about? So I think from seed systems to market, agriculture today is completely taken over by commercial powers, which are making huge amounts of profits. Let's take the case of Monsanto. When Monsanto came to India in 96, offering the technology, they had offered the technology of BT cotton at some 50 lakh rupees, well documented in Niket's thing. We actually not only put the royalty clause, we've actually Monsanto actually made millions and millions of dollars by selling the seed and bringing in the monocropping in cotton. So the problems of agriculture are ecological. The problems in agriculture are ecological, they are economic, they are social, and all these needs not the fiddling with kind of one policy, one dole here, a farm loan waiver here or a farm loan waiver there. I think we now need to look at rural India as an essential, as an important economic driver, and we need to look at agriculture as a sector that will fuel the economy and the prosperity of the country over the next, say, 5-6 decades. We have to really kind of give them a new deal, which also has to have health, education, and all those aspects are critical. Have I lost you again? Am I audible?
So it's not audible, sir. We are sorry.
can continue. I think that's fine. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I last point and then I'll stop. So one of the things that I've also struck by friends is that while we are dealing with problems in agriculture, which is essentially causing the human distress, etc., etc., if we take a step back um, and look at agriculture itself, when we started domesticating, we were hunter gatherers to begin with, and then we domesticated the wild varieties and we annualized the plants. We domesticated animals also for food, etc., etc. We actually tweaked the natural ecosystems pretty much. That agriculture itself became a biggest intervention in the sense that nature is a kind of a cycle, right? Agriculture is like a square. Agriculture made it a square, and industrial agriculture made that entire process like a linear line, uh, distancing itself from the very processes of natural ecosystems. So take a look at take for instance the ecosystem of soil, which we hardly talk about. And I quote Wes Jackson, the director of the Land Institute in Salina, Kansas. If some of you are not familiar with the work that the Land Institute is doing, please Google search the name and also read some of the remarkable approaches that Wes has taken in his lifetime. And I think that's the work that completely radically frames the question in agriculture as question of agriculture. The, the problems in agriculture cannot be addressed unless you also address the problem created by agriculture itself. Uh, the degradation of the soil. Wes Jackson calls it, it's not a problem created by the farmer, but over many millennia, this problem has accumulated. And if we want to solve the issues in agriculture, look at the framework in which we talk agriculture, because we will have to also radically alter the framework. Soil degradation, for instance, is an irreversible process. We talk about the fuel, we talk about renewables, etc. We know that fuel, non-renewable. I mean, renewable fuel is not a sort of an infinite source. It's a finite source. But hardly do we ever give importance to the erosion of soil, which has direct consequences with the food systems and the food security of almost 8 billion people on this planet. And so, what is the single most source of soil erosion? It is agriculture. We are eroding soil by practicing the annualized form of agriculture. That, I think, is a completely different but overarching framework in which global agriculture systems have to be looked at. Unless we move away from this industrialized annual forms of agriculture over a period of centuries, this business as usual condition, I don't think we will even begin to address the critical issues that humans face, humans who are part of the agriculture systems face. And problems of agriculture are the problems that all of us are dealing with, because soil erosion is as much important to a farmer as it is important to all of us. Uh, confined animal farm operations are as much a problem to a peasant as it is to a consumer or those who consume that sort of product. So agroecological solutions, which are not really part of central part, it is now people are now beginning to talk about it as a fashionable idea. Many farmers in India do practice agroecological solutions, which is a mix of sort of a sustainable farming approaches, not just reduction but a complete non-use of uh, uh, chemical farming. But it has a catch. You cannot transition from this model of agriculture, the industrial model of agriculture that we practice today, to an agroecological framework, because there are problems in that. The problems that Sri Lanka, for instance, faced. lost you again. I think I lost you again. So that's a completely different overarching thing that I think humanity has to address. That how do we address the problem of agriculture? And one approach that Wes Jackson and his friends at the Land Institute has taken is to re-perennialize. I mean, it's a I think it's a singularly most important research that is happening anywhere in the world. They are re-perennializing the crops, rebuilding some of those food systems in the perennial ecosystems that existed, but with some of the new modern science, modern scientific innovations or discoveries that we know. So I would also welcome some of the participants here to take a look at the Land Institute's work. There are a couple of Indian scientists who are collaborating on that, and I think it's a very exciting area of research. I think I'll stop here because of this constant problem with the internet. I think we have another 10-15 minutes to, suppose someone wants to shoot a question, I think I'll take it. I hope I was able to at least put across a few ideas.
Yeah. Thank you, Jaideep. And yeah, this is something. Yeah, the connectivity issues are sometimes a problem, but yeah, I think we still got a gist of the major points you wanted to raise. I think at one level,
I'll share my PPT as well.
Yeah, Jaideep. I think
I'll share the PPT later.
So I think you kind of raised the issue of how the current farming crisis is very much an ecological crisis, and that is one of the
as much as economic,
as much as it is an economic crisis. And then I think you also mentioned about the complexities that farmers have to deal with, and in that regard, the failures of public extension system seems to be something that needs to be addressed. Without addressing that, if we are talking about market-based solutions, they may not be necessarily the right way to go. I think that is another point you kind of raised. The one key thing that I found very interesting was you also talked about the resilience of the farmers, even as they deal with all these complexities, particularly the women farmer you were talking about, and how despite all these complexities, how they have been grappling with all these whatever the seed to market, as you call it, from choosing the seed to selling to market in their own ways, and how the whole thing, it cannot be seen as a farming crisis, but it's a crisis for society, given a significant population which is stuck in farming is not able to diversify in the way they would want to. So I thought these were 4 key points. I may have missed something.
Yeah, one point that I completely lost, that was to be my last point in my presentation, was we need to also look at what is working. I mean, what is not working, we know, but many farmers and many people do respond to this gigantic problem, collectively, individually as well as collectively. So individual social enterprises, we know, but we got to take in India a very serious look, a very concerted look at the collectivization of people at many levels. There are seed savers movements that are coming up, that are mushrooming. Uh, I, I'm right now a skeptic of the farmers producers companies per se, because I don't know, I've not seen that sort of a policy framework for them to operate in. But I do see many mushrooming interesting models of collectives, from really big collectives like Kudumbasri in your state of Kerala, which is a state supported model, down up to in Marathwada, a very small collective of 10 people who gave up sugarcane farming because of the water crisis and evolved their own sustainable way of farming. which is remunerative on one hand and also sustainable on the other hand. So there has not been great focus on studies looking into these models. So what are the designs they what are their design frameworks, what are their um, what is their economic and ecological framework. But I think they offer a new paradigm, new path to dealing with problems collectively. That was to be my last point. Tiago, over to you.
Tiago, are you there?
Professor Pizza, you can take.
Yeah, I think we lost Tiago now. Yes, thank you
Right.
very much, Jaideep, for your talk. Although, as Tiago was saying, it was because of all these some internet issues, but otherwise it was very interesting. So I welcome questions, and I'm sure there are questions from the participants. Anybody?
We have 10 minutes. I would
I am
take
aware.
a
Yes.
couple of yeah.
Yes, I'm aware. Yes. Yes.
Can I speak?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Please.
Good morning, sir. So I have two questions for you. So one is you had a comment on that nature is a cycle and agriculture is like a square. So could you explain that to me in detail? What do you mean by square and cycle?
I used it metaphorically. Usually, agriculture is a big intervention. I mean, there was no concept of annual crops as such there's no concept of annual crop. It was introduced by us, right? So we have broken that cycle, of growth and perishing, and we have introduced a certain measures by which a specific crop gives you periodically gives you fruits. We have reduced that. Similarly, we are tweaking the way we grow chickens, for instance. Now it has consequences. It has consequences over a period of time, because in order to grow all that, then you need an external inputs, right? Otherwise, if you look at forest ecosystems where you don't really make a lot of interventions, the fruits come and go periodically, right? The flowers bloom and descend, and there's no input given. The inputs are those are the polycultures beneath the soil that you have, right? These are not monocultures. These are polyculture systems, each one depending on the other systems, and therefore you get those fruits, etc. Now we have broken that, and we have given a sort of a symmetry, that you have to grow, you have to plant the wheat in this particular month so that you get it in 190 days at the end of a space. You have to plant cotton in this particular month when it's monsoon. Actually, we had perennial cotton. My own region, I've seen perennial cotton which blooms, which gives you cotton bolls twice or thrice a year. But in order to meet the demands, the growing demands of humanity, the mouths we have to feed, we have over a period of time built on refining those systems and making them more linear rather than cyclical, right? Uh, many of us we don't look at it as a problem. I am arguing that maybe there is this itself needs a fixing. That is what Land Institute is doing. That you have to reimagine agriculture not as an annual crop system, but a perennial crop system, right? Naive to say it won't lead to, or it's not problematic. It is problematic. Therefore, you need a long vision and a long direction of research, etc. That's what Land Institute is doing, or several other institutes all over the world are doing. Sustainable way of agriculture in Indian or in global sense is more organic way of you reducing the use of chemicals and become organic. But natural food systems, ecological food systems have always been perennial rather than annual, right? So while one step would be to really look at sustainable way of farming within our own means, and then also looking at reperennializing our system so that it becomes a food system approach rather than annual crops and input oriented agriculture, because inputs will end at some point of time. It's not an infinite source. So that is a radically different approach that some researchers over the world have taken, which I find equally important. That's the only thing I wanted to sort of.
So I have one more question. So
Yes,
now
please.
we have a lot of discussions on agriculture and ecology. So do you believe that input subsidies have anything to do with the degradation of ecology?
Uh, I there is a pro and cons. There is a political and an economic side to it. In a sense that yes, it plays a role. Like in Punjab, for instance, the input subsidies have really played a role, but they were important at that point of time. So the context in which you are locating the subsidy and the framework in which you are locating the subsidy is important. One of the things I think uh, went wrong is that we chose a specific crop for awarding of the subsidy, which actually annulled several other crops, including millets. Now you see the resurgence of millet movements all over the country. In Odisha, it is picking up. In Andhra, it is picking up. In Telangana, it is picking up, because governments have also realized that monocropping and monocultures has not helped. You have to reverse that. So you're beginning to see some movement, but now the problem is whether there is market for that, because we have over the last 30, 40, 50 years, we have developed some sort of a palette for monocropping. You've killed the multi-cropping or the biodiversity on the crop, but it has also changed our thali. Our everyday thali has 3 or 4 things only. Over a period of 1 year, you would have millets, you would have several edible oils, small edible oil seeds in chutney, etc. All that is gone because we, as a policy, it is easier to push policies or easier to push back 1 or 2 crops, because then it becomes easier for state to procure. But what it has done is, on the field, it has led to the extinction of a lot of crops over the last 40 years.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. I'll share
You
my.
want to take over?
Yeah, anybody has questions, they can put in the
Yeah,
chat
there's one
window.
question in the
Sir,
chat box.
I have.
There's
Good
one
morning,
question
sir.
in the. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I have put my question. So please, you can
There are
have a
so
look
many.
and just respond to that. Yeah.
This is Yogeshwari, right?
Yes, sir. I'm Yogeshwari.
You have asked 3, 4 questions. Agrarian
Sir,
crisis has been,
first and second are continuous ones, sir. And the third one
okay.
is separate one. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so do you think agriculture is now driven by the contribution of non-agriculture sector interventions? If that is the case, how well this both could be interconnected? I don't know. I mean, see, peasantry these days is also for 5, 6 months. It's also into the non-agriculture, work. I mean, of agriculture, wages are now equally important. I was uh, talking to a group of migrant laborers from eastern parts of Vidarbha. They go to some 27 different destinations from a single village. There are people going to 27 different villages. So there is a connect with a sort of non-agriculture wage economy. There is no doubt, but that's only a temporary phase. They ultimately, if they come back to the village and do their farming. So I'm not an expert really to comment on this. I'll have to think about this, whether how well could we interconnect these two sectors. But I do believe, I saw it in Japan, in many parts of Europe as well, that in Japan, apart from agriculture economy, Japanese government has over a period of time also deployed service economy in the countryside. The countryside is not as big as our countryside, but if Indian economy is fueled by service economy, service sector last 25 years, we have to ask what is the share of the share of rural India in that service economy boom. It's very negligible, which means that we haven't really thought about deploying some part of service economy. We don't talk about allied sector really. But today, increasingly, I am seeing that rearing goat and sheep is now a very, very important livelihood source. You remove goat and sheep from the scene, I think many families will simply collapse. It's an unorganized area. It's an unorganized area which has many gaps. You know, the gaps of veterinary services, the gaps of fodder. You know, there's no standardized market for goat. How do you measure goat weight? How do you buy? How do you sell and buy a goat? Nobody will be able to tell you. Now, these are the new areas that have emerged as a consequence of the problems in the land that farmers are facing. The land fragmentation, the non-remunerative aspect of our agriculture, massive climatic change, and increasing, aspirations, etc., etc. So you will increase your basket for income. And one of the baskets is, dairy, poultry, goatry, pisciculture, sericulture, etc., etc. But dairy is an extremely cost, energy intensive and labor intensive thing. For a small farmer, it is easier to rear poultry, poultry and backyard goat. It is these two aspects Indian policymakers haven't really paid heed to. That on the one hand, it addresses the issue of food security. Or have I lost you again?
No, sir, in between a little bit of
Yeah. So I'm saying that there is interconnectedness that needs to be explored, and communities do explore that. So I think, I don't know how much formally we can, how much of it can be brought into a formal economy, and how to connect this. So I'm not an expert, but these are my initial thoughts. Your question on informal credit, how could it be brought under some regulation? Some state governments have tried to fiddle with that. Um, um, Credit, I mean, the problem of the formal credit needs to be really fixed first. And I think that's you look at NABARD's statistics, and NABARD's, not more than, like in Vidarbha, not more than 30% farmers borrow money from formal credit systems because they are non-bankable, they are unbankable. They don't make any surplus and profit from their crops that a bank can offer this. That is where the problem lies. So where do you get your credit from? So you get your credit from, say, microfinance. Microfinance came as a policy, sort of a solution, or this thing to the problems in the formal credit system. But they offer credit at 20% rate of interest, which is still better than 50 or 60% that a Saukar will give money to. But it is creating havoc, nevertheless, because your income is down. So we have to address the issue of income, which I am saying, for that you have to look at agriculture plus as a strategy. You will, if a 2-acre farmer will need to have multiple income sources from agriculture, from his wage, from his allied sector, and perhaps some amount of service sector, which needs a rethinking at the state, at the district level. I mean, you cannot plan it at the national level. You have to really plan it at the district, or maybe in a block level. What is it that exists in my block, and how do I bring an agriculture plus kind of an income approach, which is not happening because there is no deliberation on that at the provincial or the national level. Should we stop here, Thiago?
Yeah,
you can
Jaideep.
always write to me.
Right.
I'll share my email address, etc.
Yeah, Jaideep. Yeah, so that is what we'll do. I think they have a lot of questions, but they could probably mail it to you. I'll give them your email ID so that they could later take it up there. Ideally, we would have wanted to have had you here so that we could have discussed more over tea. But yeah, we'll go.
But I see the message from Govindapuram Suresh, and I agree with him that we need to first. That has been the argument, that we need agriculture first. That we need to fix those aberrations, the problems and aberrations that have cropped in. But in the interim period, you also need, apart from agriculture, you also need to look at agriculture allied sectors as part of the agrarian economy. That is my argument. The goat, sheep, dairy, etc. is not separate. It is part of it, part of the land.
Thank you, Jaideep. Once again, thank you for that talk. And yeah, hopefully we also see you here sometime soon when things are better, and we'll have offline interactions also. So good. Yeah, thanks for that talk, and thanks for agreeing at a short notice. Yeah, so for the participants, we'll meet at 11:30. Again, Professor Srijit Mishra will be there for his talk. I think he'll talk about, Jaideep had started telling us about millets. I think Professor Srijit will elaborate more on the philosophical and practical aspects of it. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day, you all, and good 3 days to all of you. Best wishes. Bye.
Thank you, Jaideep. Thank you.
Bye.